This meeting is being recorded.
Very nice. You said something. Okay, welcome everybody to our first meeting of the SIEC board in 2023. Got some housekeeping stuff, just going to go over with everybody. First of all, the most important thing is 49 days until spring. Not that anybody's counting, I am, but emergency exits are located there and back here. If we can, we'll use this one and we'll muster out in the parking lot, probably over in that area over there, away from the building, for accountability. Basically, at the end of last year, we talked about some vision, some changes, working on some things, trying to clean things up, more consistency. So that's what we've kind of been working at in OIEC over the last month. I'm going to present some of that today. Certainly welcome anybody's input on it. What it includes is we want to update our bylaws, and everybody should have been provided a copy of the bylaws in their packet. We want to organize some of the committees. Some of the committees and working groups really haven't met and aren't active because there's really nothing for them to do at this time. A lot of them were old projects. For example, the public safety broadband was primarily FirstNet, correct, Matt? And right now there's nothing out there pending with that. So we're going to look at all of that and make some changes based on that. We also probably want to add in some committees that aren't recognized but are active. We're also going to change some of the information, more relevant topics I think we need. At the end of each meeting, we should probably have some presentations that are important to all of us, which to me, the top thing I think we should look at is cybersecurity. It's going to affect everybody. It's very important. And I don't think we're talking about it enough. So I'm going to try and arrange some type of presentation on that. And I think that will benefit all of us. So that's just some opening remarks. As we go through the agenda, I'll hit certain topics, but Kathy, can you please do the roll call?
Sure can. Good morning, everybody. When I call your name, just say here, please. Mark Ballesteri, Matt Delaney,
Here.
Tim Morse,
Here.
Dave Kozlowski,
Here.
DMNA, Bob Terry.
Sergeant House here.
I'm sorry?
Did you ask for DMNA?
Yeah.
Yes, this is Sergeant House available.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm sorry.
Justice. Brian Greenberg.
Here.
Richard Anderson. Brian Floor.
Yes.
Tim Beatty. Brendan Casey. Michael Volk. Alan Turner.
Here.
Michael Volk here, remote from Valhalla, New York.
Thank you. Anthony Tripp.
Present via Zoom from Glen Cove, New York.
Sheriff Figueroa.
Here.
Michael Soretto.
Here.
Did I miss anybody?
Mike Soretto's here if you didn't get it.
You get me, you got interrupted when stopped there in New York State Department of Transportation.
DOT. Bob Terry.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Todd Murray from DCJS.
Thank you.
Okay, for the record, we do have a quorum present in person here. So I just figured the best way to approach the new year was to go over some of the meeting rules, a little bit about the board. We have a lot of new faces. We have some visitors today, so I think it's important that we kind of go over some of the things that really aren't looked at closely. And we've already talked about the bylaws, which we'll talk more about later on. So some meeting rules. Guests or persons having relevant knowledge or information may attend and speak as part of the agenda. Upon acceptance of the meeting agenda by the board, all other guests must be recognized by the chair before addressing the board or participating in the discussion. If a board member representing a state agency is unable to attend, they may send a designee. We prefer board members to attend these SIEC boards in person. We understand that extenuating circumstances occur, and that is the reason for the WebEx. However, it should not become the norm. Really, we need to be here in person if we can, face-to-face. Over the previous couple of years, due to COVID, board members were able to attend and vote on matters remotely. However, those temporary rule changes have expired, and now only in-person attendance at a pre-designated location open to the public counts towards the quorum and allows members to vote on the matters. The SIEC bylaws do state board members may participate in a meeting no more than half of the meeting held in 1 year by video conference. Participation by video conference shall constitute presence at such meetings for all purposes, including quorum. If participating by video conference, a participant must make notice of their location pursuant to the open meetings law. If participating by audio conference only, the board member will not count as present for quorum, nor will be permitted to vote. And there are some conflictions with the opens meeting law.
Well, no, just some additional context. To state by video conference, you can't just do that day of. We need to go through a process prior to the meeting. So we need to be aware of that. That needs to be open to the public. So it's not just something you can decide to do day of.
Okay. So that's something to keep in mind for that section of the bylaws. I want to go over the SIEC board overview a little bit, what the SIEC board is all about. Most of you are aware, New York County Law Articles 26, Section 717, originating from the 2010 New York legislative session, created the statewide Interoperable and Emergency Communications Board. New York Law Article 6A, Section 328, charges the board with its duties. When you take a look at it, keep in mind over the past few years, a majority of the board duties focused on what's listed at the bottom of the statute. As I don't want to spend a lot of time reviewing these, because of our time constraints, we did include a copy in your packet, so just take a look at it. Any questions, reach out to us. As far as membership, it's a 25-member board comprised of state agency heads, state legislative representatives, representatives of first responder organizations, and experts in the field of interoperable and emergency communications. Members are appointed for a term of 4 years. Current status, there's 7 state agency spots that are all filled. There are 7 executive appointments, 4 currently and 3 open. There are 5 Senate appointments, 3 current and 2 open. And there are 5 assembly appointments, 2 current and 3 open. The appointment process is in the bylaws. So again, please go ahead and review that and how that process works. That's all I have for that, just a quick overview. And like I said, we provided the documents for everybody to take a look at. If you don't have them or want copies, just let us know and we can email them to you. Procedurally, I just want to quickly review Roberts because Roberts rules is done in a lot of different ways. What we felt the best way to move forward with things is keep it structured. And if we follow this format, there shouldn't be any issues. So basically, if somebody makes a motion, please include your name for the recording because there'll be a transcript from the recording. And if we just hear a voice and we don't recognize who it is, it's hard to put it in the transcript. So please make a motion, include your name. If you second it, also include your name. And then we would have discussion on the motion among the board. And then once the discussion is completed, we would have a vote, which would either be nay or abstentions. It'll either be carried or defeated. Simple process. I think that's the best way for us to make sure we run our meetings. Anybody have any questions on any of that? Okay. So we're going to move right into committee reports. 911 Standards Advisory Committee, Alan Turner.
Okay, the standards have gone to legal and they've been reviewed. There's no problems found. We are going to take it back to the committee for a comparison with some other national standards, CALEA, Sheriff's Association, which other one am I forgetting?
The NFPA is
NFPA.
trying to come out with a new
Just-
for 12.
Just to compare and make sure that there aren't anything that might conflict farther down the line. But we're getting close.
Very close. Thanks, Al. Brett, you want to take care of the NG91 working group?
Okay, the working group has not met since the last meeting. The GIS subcommittee, however, has been meeting regularly and has been very, very active. They've been working on continuing to collect PSAP boundary shapefiles from the counties. That's something that counties could really help the project with, and NG911's moving forward. The state's gonna have to have a accurate, completely vetted layer of PSAP boundaries in order for location-based routing to work properly. It's NG911, and you'll hear more about location-based routing in a few minutes. But it's a lot of work. It sounds easy. You just throw them in the computer and you got it, right? No, they all have to be edge mapped. You can't be any gaps, can't be any overlays, believe it or not. Get into text mapping and, property boundary mapping and stuff. It gets very, very technical and complicated. So we're working on ways to expedite that, but they've been doing a heck of a job. The committee is co-chaired just for review by an ITS GIS program office representative, Jerry Engstrom. I didn't see Jerry here. No. And a representative from New York City was DeWitt's now Mayor's Office of something technology.
Office of Technology and Innovation. Office of Technology and Innovation.
Thank you. Innovation, that's the word I couldn't think of.
Thanks, Pete.
So that they co-chair the committee, and it's very good because, as many of you know, New York City's in the middle of an NG911 implementation project. And so there's a lot of things they're learning through the process and their work with Geocom, a vendor, on this process as they work with neighboring counties and so on. So that's brought a lot of good information to the group. So we look forward to their work. And that's probably the most important thing we can be doing now while we work on proposals and everything else. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Any questions? Okay. Is Jay on the call? Is Jay on the?
Jay is having trouble getting in. I just resent him the link. I don't know if he might be, if he's able
Jay,
to.
are you there? Okay, we'll swing back around to Jay. One thing I neglected to do is I'll entertain a motion to accept the previous minutes and the agenda for today's meeting.
Make that motion, Brian.
Brian LaFleur,
I'll second it. Take a roll.
second by the sheriff. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
I assume that's an in favor. Delayed in favor. All right, the motion is passed. We'll move on to committees and we'll come back to Jay if he gets connected. Mr. Delaney. Want the clicker?
I can think of that.
Okay.
Morning, everyone. So channel naming and use working group. So just as a reminder, we have a number of guidelines on our website. Some of them have been changed in a few years. So if you see anything that necessary, you think needs to be changed, or a guideline that we don't have, that we should have as a guideline, just feel free to let us know. We can be working on that. And so obviously, if you have any input too, we can read that. Any questions on it?
Okay, we'll move right into the public safety broadband user group and still Matt.
So I just have a couple of slides here. So it was major carrier support to the World University Games just wrapped up. For those who aren't familiar, the Collegiate Sports Federation held the World University Games for collegiate athletes in January in Lake Placid, and actually spread across a number of North Central counties. And a lot of work was done with the carriers to improve coverage. Obviously, some of the areas up there are rather difficult in terms of both coverage capacity. Work was done. I think it probably is, as best as you can do in some of those areas. Areas up there you can't necessarily build because of Forever Wild or terrain. Well, a lot of stuff was put in and temporary assets were put in as well. Western New York snowstorm last month. There were some cell site outages due to the storm. Actually, one monopole actually fell over in the high winds. Actually, nobody was hurt. It was in a back parking lot. It was back there. But where sites were impacted, generally speaking, there was overlapping coverage and SOS mode on phones. Some people were seeing SOS mode, but that still allows them to roam and dial 911 carriers. So we don't think there's any significant impacts to coverage that we're aware of. In building systems, so when working with building owners, zoning officials, et cetera, on in-building coverage for LMR, that are building code requirements for that, you should also consider cellular coverage enhancements at the same time. It's not a building code requirement on cellular coverage, but certainly, I think more and more people are expecting in-building coverage from their cell phones to sort of work universally, but there's actually a public safety impact. So both if folks that responders are using cellular for example, on tablets or phones for using EMS, for example, but also 911. I mean, most 911 calls these days are coming from cell phones. So you're clearly having that ability to dial 911 in building is important. Questions on broadband?
All right, before we move on, Lieutenant Morris, I know the state police had a large presence at the WUG for the whole month of January. Do you want to speak to anything that?
Sure. I mean, the overall, the games went well. The communications end went very well. Between our partners at OIEC, Buddy and his team, and so the state agencies that allowed us to use some of their frequencies that were already set up and pre-deployed. But we worked together with all of them, trying to get a good frequency plan, a lot of cross patching, but we used about every spectrum that was available to make it work. No, it went well. To Matt's point, I worked closely with the carriers to get additional coverage on the main route in. They also provided additional coverage and opened up their broadband, or opened up their bandwidth, sorry, at all the events where they already had tower sites. So it went very well. It was pretty smooth on communications and
And it was from the beginning of January. It was almost the whole month.
Started January 6th and ended the 20th. Was it the last? I think 23rd was the close of the PSOC, but the games ended on the 20th.
Really set up before and after.
Yeah, we started, Buddy can refresh my memory, but we started in like end of August, early September. We started the planning stages of that, and then it was getting the assets, getting deployed. And we did about a week of testing prior to the games to make sure communications and we were up and solid, and we were. It held through the entire games. We had really no problems at all.
Very well organized.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lieutenant. Great job by all. It was an example of what to do, how to do it right, get everybody included from the beginning and plan it out. And it went off, I would say, almost flawlessly. I'm sure there were minor glitches as we all.
Now with the communication system, that's all I cared about. There are other flaws elsewhere. There were certain tests people couldn't pass.
Thank you, Lieutenant. All right, we'll move on to Citizens Alerting Committee and Matt Delaney. You're on.
Thank you. So a couple slides here. So the FCC released proposed rulemaking that would require EAS participants, broadcasters, cable TV, and the like, this is really the cybersecurity. So they would have to report unauthorized access to EAS within 72 hours and create a cybersecurity risk. So the issue here is that alerting and EAS specifically. So the FCC's role is mostly on the emergency alert system, which is what you traditionally heard on radio or television. Is that, very much those are becoming IP connected, internet connected systems these days. So there are still backups related to relays over the air that have been in existence since EAS and before that EBS. But with more and more things becoming internet connected and sitting on both internal networks or external networks, there's always a cybersecurity risk. So yes, there have been some, close calls in cybersecurity EAS over the years across the nation. So the SEC is really, I think, trying to get ahead of that and create a notification process and make everybody who participates in EAS really start thinking about cybersecurity and to report those incidents when they occur. So another thing is that wireless providers would have to include authentication information in their alerts. The issue here is that the way cell phones work, it is possible to, it would not be easy, it certainly would be a very difficult and a very limited attack, but it is possible to potentially spoof. There have been sort of laboratory type educational studies done on the ability to spoof alerts and spoof wireless networks. So there is, in theory, a possibility that an attacker could create a fake alert to go out on cell phones, the wireless emergency alerts that go off on your cell phone. So the FCC is again trying to get ahead. I'm not aware of any actual attacks that have ever happened in this country, of that particular nature, but I think the FCC is trying to get ahead of it and include authentication so that the phone would ensure that the message is actually coming from the cell carrier and not from somebody hacking and creating false information. And then EAS plan updates. So the New York State Broadcasters Association and the State Emergency Communications Committee submitted last July, an update to the state EAS plan for emergency alerting. The FCC had some clarification questions. They're primarily around making sure there's enough levels of redundancy in the alerting that every station can hear two other stations and what the assignments are. So like radio stations they're assigned to other stations to listen to for emergency alerts. So if an alert is generated, it then goes out over the air and the next station hears it and can relay it. And they have to be able to hear two other stations, be monitoring two other stations. A lot of it is now coming through on the internet directly, but they still have to monitor those stations. So if the internet was down or internet connection was down, they could still get the message the other way. The internet delivery of it actually gives you the ability to put in multiple languages. It allows you to put in additional longer messages. If you're looking at something like a television broadcast, it allows you to put in something like a picture or other details that are not capable of sort of the legacy over the air EAS. But the legacy over there EAS is still a fallback to get that short message out of the emergency message. This is just mostly a work in progress by the Broadcasters Association, but the state does sit on the SEC. Any questions?
Great, thanks, Matt.
And Jay Copstein looks like he's on.
Oh, awesome. Jay, are you there?
I'm here. I had trouble getting in, but I'm here finally.
All right, well, we're going to circle back around for your SafeCom report, Jay.
Okay, first of all, Chris Tuttle is recuperating in the hospital. He sends his regards. Unfortunately, he had major surgery and he can't dial in. So having said that, I'm sorry, but my report's going to be a little bit lengthy. I'll try to go through it as quickly as possible. First, as Mark is aware, I presented down at the IAEM in November on third-party dependencies. There's going to be a new national study in a new online collection format. It's being beta tested as we speak. There's a new document under review called Cyber Disruption in an Evolving 9/11 Environment that should be out shortly. From SafeCom Technology, what we're looking at for this calendar year is denial of services on GPS, alerts and warnings, and artificial intelligence. There's a new knife fog out. Go has the information on how to order it. So we're going to work on that. If Phil's got a problem, he can reach back to me or to Chris Tuttle. The National Cyber Working Group is looking to do some national information coordination to get cyber information out more quickly. The Department of Defense is looking at state-based communications. For SAFECOM and then perhaps NYSWIC, there's the new demographic form coming out for the membership. The NECP update should be out in the fourth quarter of 24. The FCC is looking to modify their current presentation on 911 resiliency. For Mark, the Spring SAFECOM meeting is in May in Pasadena, and the executive board meetings for SAFECOM and NYSWIC are at the end of this month in Pittsburgh. If you have any information or any items you want me to bring up, please let me know. There's going to be a FEMA NIMS update shortly. It's going to include a communications branch under the logistics section with 3 units and associated positions. For P25, if you're doing radios, we're going to recommend multi-key if you're doing P25 encryption. The Information Sharing Task Force is looking at the interoperability between CAD standards that Iowa is implementing. There's a new document that's come out called Preparing for Technological Transformation in ECCs. The P25 working group is looking at P25 in a cloud-based environment. Another document under CISA review is a link for public safety LMR for IT professionals. Since more LMR systems are falling under IT, we're trying to teach IT that, like, for example, they can't take it down for 2 or 3 hours on a Sunday night. Public safety can't live with that. The last 2 items. Right now, we're going to be re-reviewing communications during Hurricane Ian down in Florida. We're going to be looking at cellular and alerts and warnings. We're trying to collect the AARs to get information. And finally, there's another document coming out that Mike Davis is much involved with, making a business case decision for interoperability, and also refreshing the life cycle document. Does anybody have any questions? I'm sorry I had to go so quickly through this. I know time is pressing. Mark, back to you.
Thanks, Jay. Just on the NI5, Phil ordered, I think, 250 of them. The last time they had an update, we ordered them, and because of the large amount of orders they get, we never even got the last one. What we're encouraging people to do is download the application on your phone, on your tablet. It's a great application. It's the latest update. And I believe when you go back to the application, it updates to the most current one. You can search through it. It's a lot easier to use. We did order it, and as we get it, we'll talk to everybody about distributing, but in the interim, the application works great. We are also working on, this year, we're going to turn our NYSTIC 5, which is the companion document to the NI5, but it's New York State information. We're working on turning that into an application as well. We're working with SIEC ECD through the TA process to do that. So just a couple bits on that. Any other questions for Jay or any questions on that? Okay. State Agency Working Group. We met back on January 23rd. Prior to that, Matt and I went out and met individually with the state agencies, partners, and we are reigniting that committee. We're working on making it more active, which we're going to talk about for some of the committees here on the SIEC board as well. And it's been working out really well. We've got some conversations going on. We've also started to connect some people in the state agencies with the county partners for some of the projects they're working on. So it's gonna work out really well. And I'll have a more in-depth report probably in May on the state agency working group, but for now, it's moving in the right direction. Any questions on any of the committees? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to accept the committees.
Make a motion, Alan Turner.
Alan Turner,
Second motion, Anthony Tripp.
seconded by Ryan. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No delay on that one. Okay, now we're gonna have some program updates. We'll start with Matt on some grants.
Again, so I'm gonna go through each of the grants, just a quick updates. So on the SIEC formula grant, the last award or announcement we made was in August. That was a combined 2 years of grants, so that was a $90 million award. And as you can see, we're just starting, 610,000 vouchers because it's only been out there for a few months, contracts are being developed and so forth. So that's currently runs through 12/31 of 2020. See, we have several other open grants still, going back in time, previous years. This one through the end of this year right now, only 10.5 million has been vouchered out of the $45 million grant. The one before that, 31 million out of 45 million. So, if you are an awardee and you have grants, they spend your money and then get your vouchers in. So if you have spent, make sure you're submitting your vouchers. PSAP operations grant, we have 2 that are open right now. This was from this past August, and the one from the year previous. These are $10 million grants. 9 million has been vouchered from 2 years ago, and then this one has already got 2.4 million out of 10. The expenses are a little different for eligible expenses for PSAP operations compared to the formula. A lot of this is based on operational expenses, so it gets vouchered quicker. Extensions are being considered on an individual basis as needed.
Matt, operational expenses such as what?
The PSAP, things like salaries, operating telecommunications expenses are allowable. Things related to the operations of the PSAP.
Thanks.
And these are county grants, so these are issued out to the counties.
The operations is pretty broad word in that. It's, everything from maintenance of your, not the radio equipment, but your consoles, your CAD system, that type of stuff as well.
And then is it they applied for a particular thing they're looking for, or what's the process in that?
So they submit a budget after. So these are grants. This one and the one I just spoke a moment ago are formula based. So the award amount is subject to a formula. So the county gets a certain amount of money based on call volume, in this case, call volume, CAD incidents, and so forth. And then they submit a budget during contract development after the award. It indicates what they will be spending their money on, and then they submit their vouchers and get reimbursed for it.
So hypothetically, if somebody wanted to enhance their emergency medical dispatch within their PSAP, updating their software, technology, or things like that, this would be a grant that they might be eligible for?
I believe so.
Yes. We'd have to look, but I believe so.
Yeah, and,
Go ahead.
do I have?
There we go. Is there a grant section?
Yeah,
The
so,
chair recognizes Nicole Erickson from our grants.
yeah, just a note on this. So all of those contracts are managed with our grants program administration unit. So we work closely. Ryan is our contracts rep that handles all of the requests, reallocation requests, but we work closely with the counties in executing their contracts, making sure their spending is appropriate, validating everything with our Office of Interoperable and Emergency Communications, and really kind of working collectively as a unit to make sure that this funding is spent. I will say that because this is state funding, there are additional requirements. So sometimes the spending doesn't necessarily jive because there are certain MWBE requirements that have to be done, procurement requirements. So it is, these are large, they're large grant dollars. So they are, there is a delay in the spending. The PSAP you'll see a lot easier because it's more of those operational expenses, which are easier to voucher. So, thank you.
Thank you. If you have any other questions, we can certainly talk offline. We'll get you a copy of the RFA, let you see what the allowable and non-permissible stuff is.
That'd be great. Thanks.
Okay, go ahead, Matt.
Any other questions on PSAP operations for you? SIEC targeted grants, this is the targeted grant. So currently, we're in the budget development and pre-award stage for the 2022 SIEC target. This is $62 million because it's 3 years of appropriations and a little bit left for previous appropriations. So obviously we don't have a budget period or vouchering for that yet. If you look back at the original first two phases of the 2018 SIEC targeted, this one runs through November 30th of this year. Only 18 million of 32 million has been vouchered. And then in the phase two, which runs through 2020, middle or early 2025, 7.5 million of about 30 million. So these tend to be more involved projects, construction of new tower sites, new radio systems, and so forth. So it does take longer. It's a lot more involved. Environmental reviews can be involved, and other things, zoning, building towers, construction, supply chain delays. But as we always say, if you are an awardee, certainly try your hardest to spend your money and get those vouchers in as soon as you can. Questions on targeting? So, as I just mentioned, that previous or the current PSAP operations and formula grant awards were announced back in August, and we're working on the targeting grant. So to date, over $729 million in state grant program and state grant money has been awarded since the program's inception in 2011. And please submit your vouchers. Questions? Okay.
So as most of you folks know, my primary responsibility as a radio engineer was the communications unit program for the state. This now falls on Phil McHugh and Julie Schwartz. But unfortunately, we had a duplicate meeting today, and they're attending that meeting for OIEC. So I told them, I remember the ComU program, I'll do it. So anyway, this is our ComU program schedule that they've come up with for 2023. We have a ComL course actually next week. We do have quite a few openings. So if you have folks that you would like to get to this ComL course, reach out directly to Phil and Julie. They'll walk you through how we can get them in LMS and get them to the course. We are still holding it. It's a state-sponsored course, so we're able to hold those if we don't meet the minimum number of students, but there's quite a few openings. So if you have folks you want to get through this, we'll coordinate offline and try and fill that course or get more folks in that. Last year, we did some regional training workshops. We went out to different areas of the state. It worked out really well. And what we decided to do was to continue doing that each year and just change the location to where we're going. So this year, you'll see these as we go along, but the first one's going to be in Oswego in February. Then we're going to do another one in Dutchess County. And then I believe the next slide shows one in Warren County in June. And basically we go out and we bring the equipment. We talk about the ComU program. We talk about what communications assets we have. We bring the vehicles. The first part of the day is basically PowerPoint presentations. And then the second part of the day is hands-on. We go outside. Hopefully in February, we'll find a warm spot, and we basically pull the equipment out. Buddy's shop, his crews come up, and it's a really, really good learning tool. And that way you can see what you got if you ever need request stuff and you actually touch it, set it up, any questions anybody has, and we'll continue to do this every year and move it around the state. So the next course after the ComL is a ComT in March. We're going to do another train the trainer. We found the ComT was one of the most valuable ComU positions because that's pretty much what our folks do when we go out there. We're doing technician work. And a lot of folks request this. And The first 3 days of the course are basically PowerPoint and what we're required to do from CISA. We also add in some modules of our own, like jamming. Thank you to Brian LaFleur for putting that together. We add in the safety module because we feel safety is really important, and one of the things in communications is often forgotten, especially on the technician level. And then the last 2 days or day and a half is, again, we do like an exercise, a little mini exercise. We set up microwave shots, we patch radios, make cables, right? We make cat cables. I'm trying to think what other program radios. We try and do as much as we can with the students so they get hands-on with the stuff. So because of that, we decided to do another train the trainer course so we can increase our instructor pool. Right now we have 8 instructors. We'd like to increase our instructor pool. So when we take that step into regional trainings, which at some point we're going to, we'll have enough instructors to do multiple courses if we want to. We do 1 COMEX a year at the SPTC. Generally, CISA would come and show us how to do a COMEX, and basically it's more of a COMEX train the trainer, if you will. Well, this year is going to be the first one that we're going to do that is going to be based on New York State stuff and local stuff in the area. So we're going to try and make it as real as possible. We're going to have a real event. We're going to set up a command post. We're going to set up an EOC. We're going to connect all the dots. It's going to be like a real event. That's what we're shooting for. And it's going to be specific to New York. So this should be pretty good. Unfortunately, we can't invite 300 people to do it. But I think as we do it each year and get better at it, it will be really valuable for everybody. And then we're going to do a COMEL train the trainer. Again, we have 12 COMEL instructors in the state. So we want to increase our pool for when we jump into that regional training. Orange County, we have I believe 3 AUXCOM instructors down in the area. They requested to do a course down there. So they're offering an AUXCOM course down in Orange County. Incident Communication Center Manager course in June at the SPTC. RADO course the end of June. I think that should be a 06, I would imagine, right? I don't know what month 60 is. God help us if there was 60 months. And then we're going to do another CompT course in October, an AUXCOM course ourselves at the SPTC. And then we're going to have our COMU instructor meeting and exercise in December, which we do every year. We get all the instructors together and we basically look at all the evaluations from the previous courses during the year, and we come up with bullets on how we can make it better, how we can, improve what we're doing already with the program. I would ask that you guys help promote this program at this point, because I know a lot of you folks have asked about these courses. Reach out to our office. Julie and Phil will be more than happy to provide whatever information you need. And we've already talked to our consortium partners about possibly, maybe looking at some regional stuff, maybe possibly in 2025. So we want to start planning for that, or 2024. We want to start planning for that this year, or at least look at it. So as far as credentialed folks statewide, this is where we are. We've got 185. You can see they're across the different ICS positions under ComU. This number is more than all the rest, and I already touched on that. It seems to be one of the most important roles. This gives you an idea on how many folks have been trained. We had 450 when I started 5 years ago. We've added in another 600. So we're well over 1,000 trained folks out there. And we think obviously that number is going to go up each year by hopefully more this number. Everybody knows what happens between 20 and 21. Well, actually 2021 and into 22 was COVID, so that affected our numbers, but we'd like to be somewhere between 150 and 200 a year. Any questions about the ComU program?
When is your next ITSL program? You had nothing marked for 20.
Yeah, we didn't do an ITSL this year.
Okay.
We want to build those other ranks. Yep. But other questions? Okay. Turn over to Brett for their 911 program update.
Please take a moment. We got a number of County 911 coordinators in the room. So get to recognize that, probably more than I've seen at a meeting in a long time. Got the president of the State 911 Coordinator Association, Mark Kazmarek from Niagara County Sheriff's Office. A couple past presidents, past President Kelly Donahue, back from Clinton County. David Cook, you're representing FirstNet, but I think he's like the charter past president, right? That's what we'll call you. Charter past president. How's that for your bylaws, Mike? What else do we have here? Joe Plummer from Jefferson.
Kevin
Matt.
Pulley, Vice President.
Pardon?
Kevin Pulley's the Vice President of Coordinators.
Okay. Oh, yes, you're vice president. Yes, Kevin Pulley from Oswego. Excuse me. And we've got Dutchess and Old Imperial County here, very well represented now. You're gonna hear from a couple minutes, right? Yeah. Yeah. All right. So I think anyone I miss? Oh, state police. One coordinator, Lieutenant Moore. The county of state police. No, not really.
Pretty much.
No, state police operate, and Alan, sorry. Alan Turner, that one coordinator for Orleans. See what I started? Now I'm getting myself in trouble here. All right. It happens. So, 911 program update. It's nice, we've been down to a lot of work recently, and it's so glad the director is on board and your transition just about done, right? You're off and running, and
I'm still the new guy for another
I
year.
think your new guy days are about up. Yeah. Off and running. So it's good we can get down to a lot of work, and this thing came on board, and this is a lot more than people, I just chatter about it, but I'm surprised there isn't more chatter than anyone community about it. The FCC has issued this month a notice of proposed rules on location-based routing for wireless 911 calls. I talked about that with NG 911 a little while ago in the GIS aspects of that, the PSAP boundaries. This thing is pretty big because what's happening here is the wireless, you see here that it was issued, the comments are due by February 16th and the reply comments by March 20th. What they're proposing, the FCC, is basically to require the wireless providers. So this is ahead of it getting into the NG911 network and an NG911 system. They propose that the wireless providers, commercial mobile radio service, and covered text providers for 911 deploy technology supporting location-based routing or IP-based networks, okay? And use the location-based routing to route all 911 voice calls and texts originating from their networks when the caller information meets certain baseline accuracy. And there's been a lot of improvement over the last few years in the location accuracy of wireless 911 calls. And that's because some creative technology companies, one of them New York based, Rapid SOS, I don't mind mentioning them, even though they're technically a vendor because they provide this technology to every PSAP in the country at no cost. What they've done is figured out, along with others in the field, how to use your smartphones in your hand. It seems to know where you are pretty well when you're ordering pizza. Not necessarily know where you are when you dial 911. They use it in that smartphone technology and in a hybrid fashion with the existing technology of 911 systems using tower sites and a GPS chip, triangulating or in GPS combination thereof. All that together coming up with much better accuracy as the PSAPs are seeing in that rapid SOS location module. And the PSAPs is running alongside their 911 system. Recognizing that one of the wireless providers, AT&T, I can name provider because it's right in the notice of rules, notify the FCC that as of July of last year, they were routing 911 calls. They're bypassing this tower thing. When they feel good about the location, they're sending it based on the PSAP boundary, direct to the proper 911 center. Now, well, you would think it'd go to the right center all the time, right? Well, the way it works today is your routing is based on the sector of the cell tower you hit. Now, this is an enhanced 911. So if we continue to read, keep in mind, when AT&T announced that, they said, yeah, they can do it on E911 as well. As long as we get ahead of it and have a good location, instead of sending it to the PSAP that antenna on the tower is telling us to send to, we'll send it based on our map to the right PSAP. And FCC took note of that. They put out a preliminary thing and then now this. They said, okay, if AT&T can do it, why can't all the providers do it? That's what's happening right before our eyes. So it says route to the proper PSAP using LBR. And if the accuracy is not well enough or the timeliness not well enough, then you basically will use the existing technology. They will deliver the calls, text, associated routing, and IP format on the request of 911 authorities who have established the capability to accept NG, it's supposed to be NG 911, compatible IP. So the writer is saying they got to do it for NG. So why am I talking about E911? So let's keep pulling. FCC saying, okay, we want to require them to do it for NG. But they've got a tentative conclusion that LBR should be required for all routing, even in both E911 and NG911. New York is in an enhanced 911 environment, legacy, okay? So the FCC is basically saying that they're going to require it on E911 unless everybody objects, okay? By February 16th. If you need, the need for the FCC to establish, they're also asking on the need for FCC to establish a registry. So how's the semantics of this going to work? Should there be a registry or a database that would allow state and local 911 authorities to notify the providers that they're ready for this, they can handle it, okay? And should it be organized by PSAP, state, as ENET, or how do they organize it? Should it be combined with the existing MSAG registry that the FCC has? So there's a little bit on how that's going to work that seems to be up in the area. But that's why I'm making notice to here, the board, because this board is responsible for some, keeping an eye on the 911 system in the state. And these are issues that are going to start as the state hits the road and gets some traction. This thing is going to bring up some more questions and answers initially, but we'll see how it evolves. And what is the right authority for the routing decisions and notifications? This is the kind of question that's going to give the council here a little bit of, I don't think he'll lose a night's sleep, but he'll kind of things that, because the SIEC board in itself has some responsibility in terms of routing of 911 calls in New York State, at least in terms of the designated PSAP within a county, correct, council? So with that responsibility, the board may in fact have to be consulted on this should things start to, should this affect those things in New York? Now, what I couldn't find in this, reading this over and over, and I'm also working with the New York, this National Association of State 911 Administrators. They have a committee on this, and I'm on the committee. And what's not said in this notice is what exactly are they, what PSAP boundary are they considering requiring them to route to? So there's an assumption here that it's the existing, what is AT&T doing? The assumption is that it's the existing boundary layers, right, that are in use for wireless calls. In other words, let's pick a county that we got here that has local PSAPs in it. any here that still has, well, you have Lockport and Niagara Falls, right? So you got two. So in Niagara County, New York, all wireless 911 calls go to the Niagara County Sheriff's Office as designated by the SIEC board or the old 911 board when phase 2 and all that was done back in the 90s. So landline, however, based it on the emergency service number district, basically goes to either direct to Lockport, Niagara Falls, or the county. Wireless goes to the county. In Westchester County, where we have 30-some PSAPs, maybe 40, the state police in Hawthorne handle all the wireless 911 calls, and all day long redirect the ones the state police aren't going to handle to Yonkers, White Plains, New Rochelle, and 36 or 38 other PSAPs all day long, okay? That takes time on the phone. What's that do? That takes time away from emergency response. The people aren't, the fire, police, and EMS aren't going to be dispatched. Nobody's going to hit the road until that call gets transferred and the information gets to the PSAP that's going to dispatch those units. So you can see the delay. The FCC recognizes there is millions of calls a year where there's this thing going on. There's also, because of the way calls are routed, they hit it. You have a river, right? You have boundaries. It's conceivable that a call, somebody could be in the city of Buffalo and hit a tower in Niagara County, correct? Okay, and the call gets directed to Niagara County because of which antenna it hit in our legacy E911 system. It happens all day long in New York City. Calls go into New Jersey. They have to be transferred back to New York City across the Hudson River. It happens near Nassau County line. It happens, calls in Westchester County are being answered by Nassau County. It goes across the Long Island Sound and have to be directed back across the Long Island Sound to Westchester. And then maybe directed to a local PSAP. So it's this stuff goes on, and FCC recognized there is, I think they believe, over 500,000 calls a year. And that's a conservative number of these, what they call misdirected calls, where the call is going to a PSAP, it's not supposed to get it. It's the wrong PSAP, but it's because it hit a tower outside of the church. It's routed to a different PSAP. So that could take up the whole afternoon, you guys. We will serve dinner if you're still here. But
Brett's buying. You're buying.
So what this is doing is this location-based routing is saying, no, wait a minute. We're smart enough now. We got these smartphones, right? We can, if we get ahead of this, instead of using an antenna to route to New Jersey when it should be in Manhattan, we're going to look at the map and see that that person's actually in Manhattan and send it to New York City and send it to Niagara County instead of Buffalo. So that's what this is about. It's going to save millions of minutes out of dispatch time a year nationwide when this thing happens, even in the E911 if they can make it happen. So what it's going to affect us is if they're just going to require, all right, do what you're doing now, then it would, they would route them all to Niagara County that are within Niagara County, eliminate the misdirected, which is a great thing. It's not going to take long for somebody to say, we can do that. Why can't we send them right to Niagara Falls? Why can't we send them right to Lockport? Why can't we send them right to Yonkers? So on and so forth. That's where the board and saying, so the question that NASNA has, and I would believe we would have, is who makes that decision for New York? Who's going to decide? Who's going to tell AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile where to send those calls to? I believe the SEC is going to say, eliminate the misdirected in what we're doing today. And then they're trying to figure out themselves, who do they depend on to notify them to make any changes. All right. So that's what I'm trying to say here. And As far as readiness, that's a technical question as far as your call handling equipment and so on. I don't believe there's any change to that, other than the location. May have some more digital data, they said, and more accurate dispatchable stuff, so there may have to be some stuff there. As far as being ready, that part I'm trying to get a handle on as well. But I think I've covered it. Any questions on that part? I just wanted to make note of it because I think it's a big deal. I'm excited about it, but at the same time, I'm kind of like trying to figure out in the weeds exactly what the heck's going on. And we want to make sure at NASDA that SEC has the information on what the issues are going to be and what questions need to be decided ahead of time so there isn't confusion. In other news, we've been working on preparation of the minimum standards update proposal and researching it with a new NFPA 1225 release, which many PSAPs depend on for a informative, very good standard PSAP standards. So continued update and research involving NG911 through participation in NASDA meetings and committees. Intention to get the working group back together just for an update and level setting in the near future so that everybody's on the same page. They've basically been on pause since the pandemic. They were very busy during the pandemic, but also awaiting basically direction as we, work the proposal. So that's we hope to at least do a level setting and get updated so that we're ready on that. Also, we continue to try to, monitor the stuff that's evolving, going on. A lot of the PSAPs in the state are having staffing shortages. Civil service stuff. That's why some of these 911 coordinators are here today. It's because they were actually downtown talking that with their representatives yesterday. Ski slopes. They're driving 911 centers nuts this year. iPhone 14 came out with crash detection. Automatically dials 911 when the phone believes you've been in a crash. It's happening on ski slopes a lot where 911 calls are going into PSAPs. So not sure where that's going to go, but and then the other things like Uber and all that have, 911 notification stuff in it now. Another app. Vehicles, more and more car manufacturers are doing this stuff, like OnStar stuff. So we're just kind of keeping an eye on that so we can try to keep everybody informed. I'd like to measure, is this an issue in New York? PSAP's getting a lot of it. The LBR thing I was talking about, the notice is already companies are, some of the aggregators and other companies working in actually telco are already calling counties asking for PSAP boundaries and so on due to the anticipated FCC requirement. 988 mental health hotline was formerly the suicide prevention hotline. It's gone 988 as of last July. They reported they've had, I believe it's 2 million calls or 10. Is that what, Dana?
Yeah, it's more than that in the time frame.
More than, it's like 10 million nationwide. Yeah. The system is seen already. It's being used and numbers are increasing. They had a major outage. It was a day or a day and a half in December. The FCC, and I know there's a lot of stuff on that. And there's another notice of proposed rules that has to do with 988. And should that have to meet the notification rules of 911, where people get notified, because there seemed to be a big delay in anybody knowing. I think our Office of Mental Health found out when I notified them, when I started getting emails. And we work on that committee. Dana here from Dutchess has been very big in this process, but Dutchess County. Thank you, Dana, for all that work you're doing in that. And everybody. Other activity, the NFPA 3000 committee that I stand on Standard for Active Shooter Hostile Environment Response. It's an NFA committee that was formed. It's requested the City of Orlando Fire Department after the pulse shooting in Orlando to establish. They basically said we need to get law enforcement, fire, and EMS together on this stuff. There's too many things that are occurring, and there's too much repeated issues with these incidents that you see in after action reviews. So NFPA was chosen because they were the mechanism that law enforcement, fire, and EMS agreed had the best standards producing system where they could manage such a multidisciplined, multi-jurisdictional things. And it's the first time the NFPA really took on a law enforcement centric issue because it involves fire, because it involves EMS. And it's also one of the first times they allowed the draft to hit the street as an emergency action because of the urgency of this issue. It's sad that that is the case in this country, but at least they did this, and now we're going on to the second draft meeting, which means they had the draft standard and they had the first draft meetings, which I went to in San Diego a few years ago, adopted the standard, and now we're going into the second version of it. And their meeting is in March in Orleans. We've had 2 preliminary meetings, virtual, and we'll adopt in March the second rendition of this thing. Technically the third, if you include the original draft. Well, I may put this up here today because there seems to be around the country not a lot of recognition of this standard. And more police, fire, and EMS agencies and health centers. There's a whole section and chapter on communications, and that's why I'm on that committee. I'm representing NASDA because I unfortunately was the 911 director for an active shooter incident here in New York in 2009 in Binghamton. So they asked me to represent the 911 community from across the country on this committee, and I've been on it, and it's very interesting stuff to sit with all these people from around the country. So any input you guys have, I have now till March to provide it to the committee, and take a look at this standard. Really, it has stuff for your communications center. It has stuff for your law enforcement, fire, and EMS agencies, and I'm here to plug it because I think it's important. There's too many of these incidents. Any questions? Dried up. Sorry, I should have brought my water with me.
Hey, Brett. Okay, we're now on to other updates and reports. Right now, we only have one area. Our C3 group, Matt.
Mark, I've got a question.
Go ahead, Jay.
Is the New York State Association of Chiefs of Police on board with this NFPA 3000?
I'd have to look if they have an actual committee member. I do not know. There is other representation from within New York State. I know New York City and FDNY. I believe NYPD is on it. I can't tell you for sure on that. I will check on that. But let you know, but I can't tell you whether they're on board. You'd have to ask them.
It might not be a bad idea if we're going to be involved with it on the state level to make sure that they're advised.
I believe it's that committee is something that any agency can apply to be on. There's a process through the NFPA. You can look it up. That's what I had to do. And it's an application process, and the standards board at the NFPA would review it. But they're looking for participation by all means. I would imagine they'd be open to any law enforcement, fire, and EMS representation. There is a huge representation on this committee of all those, plus, even your lock companies, okay, have representation on this committee because there's always issues of security devices versus fire exiting capability from structures, correct? So those things are reasons that there's issues in these active shooter incidents about access into buildings and ways people can get out. So that's why those, you have some representation from just about everything you can think of, from the recovery of these incidents to the response.
So Jay, Brett will find that information out and get with you offline on it.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome. Any other questions? Okay, so last night the C3 group met. For those that aren't familiar, this is the consortium chairs from all 9 consortiums in the state. And we did this at the last meeting, and it worked out really well. Last night they officially recognized a chair now, and a co-chair and a secretary. So the chair, Dana Smith, is going to
For once, I was at the meeting and picks or something. Dana Smith, representing the Hudson Valley Consortium. My day job is I'm the Commissioner of Emergency Response in Dutchess County. It's a pleasure to be here this morning with you, and thank you. As the director mentioned, the consortium chairs after our last meeting had a conversation, this was in the fall, about organizing our group a little bit better, working closely together as consortium chairs and pushing stuff up to the office. Last night in our meeting, that was the conversation. Mark and the staff absolutely supported that, and I said yes. So the consortium chairs represent the individual counties, and from there it'll come up through the C3 group, and then we'll work closely with the office. And our plan is to meet regularly before our C3 meeting, which always the night before this board meets. Some of the things that we're looking at as one, and talking with the office, it's been 11 years since the grants have been out, permissible versus non-permissible costs. There's always concerns about that. So the consortium chairs will be seeking feedback from their individual counties and then come back to the director and his staff to look at what is permissible and not. After 11 years, it's time to start looking at that. A lot of projects have been completed and there's other efforts that we do want to work on. Brian, with your question before, one of the things about the PSAP operations grant and EMD, it's a 12-month performance period. So by the time you get your contract, move forward, select a vendor, go through all that, it's hard to get it all done in 12 months. There are other funding opportunities though, and that people look at, but I believe it's supported. One of our concerns, obviously, is next generation 911, and as consortium chairs, we're going to be chiming in on that a lot. We think this board and should support the office. I think to make it happen in New York State, it has to come from all but downtown. It has to come from the Senate and Assembly and the governor's office to support the commissioner here and get that done. It's been a long time coming. I've been in my role for 12 years. Next Gen's been 3 to 5 years away for 12 years. So I think the folks here are doing a great job with moving things forward, but we really need to push from this group and others and the different associations across the state to move that forward. I know it's a hot topic for the 911 coordinators as well, and I know they've been talking about it the last few days. In reference to what Brett was talking about with the location-based routing, I think universally the consortium chairs would support that and would support the board making comments to the FCC. I know I wrote a note and plan on going back. Anything we can do to improve that, it would be great. The same thing with 988 as well. One of the other concerns as well, and maybe the board may want to consider this in conversations or perhaps an urging to the Department of State. Your code enforcement officials get continuing education every year that's mandated. There is a requirement for in-building coverage on all new building construction for radio communications, and a lot of places that's not being addressed. It gets very complex quickly, but we would urge that that be included in their yearly training. There's BDAs or bidirectional amplification systems that improve in-building coverage, that the way the law is written, the local authority having jurisdiction, meaning whoever runs that radio system has to sign off on the in-building coverage is there. And for police, fire, and EMS, and with the size of somebody's buildings, the construction technology today, the green technology today, LED lights and film on windows are all things that can impact land mobile radios inside a building. And international building code and in New York State, it is addressed, and it's just not being done consistently. So we urge that that be included through the Department of State and the building inspector's annual training, so we can update that. And again, we'll continue to be more organized and get some things done and keep trying to push the director and get some things done to support the consortiums and the counties. That's all I have.
Thank you, Dana. Any questions for Dana? This group? We also talked about expanding that group a little bit and offering invites to the state agency working group, have a representative from that group, and also the 911 coordinators, president or vice president, whoever could attend, and Chris Tuttle at the federal level. We think that would round out a good core group of people that start communicating better. All of us, you know, deal with communications all the time, and sometimes the worst communicators are us. So we want to try and, I think, clean up some of these committees and groups, get them more active, and make sure we're all on the same page with things. It was incredible. Matt can attest to it as well. When we met individually with the state agencies, we were learning things and they were learning things. And that group's been together for a long time. So I think we just need to re-energize some of those. Under old business, anybody have any old business for the board? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to accept old business.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Director.
Brian LaFleur,
I'll second.
seconded Mr. Morris. All in favor? Opposed? No delays on the phone. Good. Carried. New business. Does anybody have any new business before I go over what I have? Okay. I should only take about 45 minutes to an hour on what I have.
Well, that's quick.
This is where everybody laughs. Okay.
That's quick.
The only thing I have under new business, there's proposed bylaw changes that are in your packet as well. We looked at some of the committees, and as I said, some of the topics that the committees had have long since expired. They haven't met. There's no need for them to meet. So there's some suggested bylaw changes there. I'd like to add a bylaws committee to take a look at the bylaws and clean things up. As we already indicated, there's a bylaw that needs a little bit more language in there to meet the open meetings law, I believe. Just clarifications, thank you, Deb. I also wanted to look at formally putting in a state agency working group in the bylaws, because that's going to be an active committee for a long time, I'm sure. So take a look at those changes. For those on the phone, we will email you the document so everybody can view it according to the bylaws. We need to view it, look at it. We'll discuss it next meeting and vote on it next meeting. That's how the process works according to the bylaws. That's all I have for new business. Is there any other new business? Entertain a motion for new business.
Anthony Tripp makes the motion.
Okay. And Bob Terry, second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. The other thing on your agenda, which shows you the meeting date for the year, we'll have that on the agenda in case you ever need to look back if you don't have them on your calendars. In closing, I just want to thank everybody for your time on this board. I'm hoping that we can be more active, have some really good discussions. I'm going to try and bring some new, fresh topics here, and we're going to try and reorganize and clean up things a little bit. For those that don't know, Joanne from our office is retired. Fortunately, it's a huge loss for us. Joanne had a lot of things she did for us and was always somebody we could go to and get the answers to everything that had to do with OIEC. So she's going to be sorely missed. So when you see her out and about, she's retired. Anything else for the good of the order?
Who's replaced Joanne? Is anyone replacing Joanne?
Right now, most of the functions have been split out in the office for now. Kathy's got most of them, between Kathy and Phil, pretty much.
By split out, we mean Kathy. Really
Right.
is doing it.
Phil's not gonna do it.
Right.
Phil's at another meeting.
Which Joanne might be at if she was here.
That's all right. Joanne's earned her keep.
Any other questions or things to the order? Again, thank you for the huge audience, all our guests from the 911 communities. Be great and good. Take a look at those changes. We can read through them if you want, but I don't think we need to. Everybody can read, so read through them. If you have any questions, let us know. And I'll entertain a motion for adjournment. Motion by the sheriff, seconded by Ryan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you, everybody. Have a good day. 49 days till Frank, Phil.
Goodness.
Thanks,